Okay, we had the Tunisian Revolution, also known as the Jasmine Revolution. Okay, background. So this guy is Ben Ali, and the names are kind of hard to say, so we're gonna try our best. But he's named Ben Ali. He's the main dude, kind of the guy who causes all the problems. And our revolution is in Tunisia. So Tunisia is in the northernmost tip of Africa. It's a small country, but has 11 million people in it. Tunis is the capital and a notable city that we're going to look into, especially when we get to the Spark, is City Bouzid. And that's where Mohammed Bouzazi, you'll figure out who he is. That's where his events took place, and that's kind of like the beating heart of our revolution. And then what's going to end up happening is the stuff that happens in Tunisia is going to send a ripple effect throughout pretty much the entire Middle East. One more thing about Ben Ali. He first got into power in 1987 and ruled till 2011. And there's a lack of jobs under his rule. Okay. Causes. So we said there's three main causes: political corruption, economic stagnation, and then media exposure. So in terms of the political stuff, Ben Ali, when he first got into power, didn't have nearly the amount of power he did in 2011. So over time, kind of like Putin, if you guys know about that, he slowly got more and more like restrictive. So he gained more and more power and kind of restricted the people more. Got to a point where he controlled the majority of the press. In particular, there's a rapper named El General, the General, and he was arrested for singing the lyrics, "Mr. President, your people are dying." So it got to a point where even songs were being confiscated. Economically, around this time, about 15%. You can't really see the numbers, but this is 2010, and this is when the revolution is happening, and it goes down, because when we get into the effects, you'll see that the revolution didn't really help much. But, so the unemployment in Tunisia around this time was 15%. 20% of those people had a college education. And then in terms of overall, the youth unemployment was 30%. So in 2011. So one in three people were out of jobs under the age of 18. Additionally, economically, inflation was a huge problem. The price of milk doubled in 2 months, kind of like the French Revolution. The bread price doubled in 2 months, and the workers didn't have the wages to make up for that price gap. Social media, that's kind of like our catalyst in this whole thing. Because the press was so restricted by Ben Ali, a lot of the youth looked to social media to communicate and spread messages and then organize protests and stuff. And about social media, 85% of the population has phones and 5% has smartphones. So it's definitely an easy way to access each other. Okay, Spark. So this is Mohammed Bouzazi. I brought him up earlier. This is in December 17th, 2010. He was a fruit vendor, so he was out of a job, like the majority of the other people, and he was trying to sell fruit. He's 26. He's trying to sell fruit in the street for his family. The government comes along and says he can't vend fruit there because his permit isn't like legible. Something's wrong with his permit. So they confiscate his fruit stand, and he obviously like gets mad at them for doing that, and it becomes a whole scene. They beat him up all over a fruit stand. So he goes to municipal authorities and tries to talk to them and complain. They don't listen. So he gets really mad, goes to a building, douses himself in petrol, and then lights himself on fire to symbolize the struggle that he is feeling on the inside. So that made everything just explode over the country. And who Hossein Falhi. That's probably not right. Hossein Falhi, something like that, is a guy that 5 days later electrocutes himself in another protest. I didn't show that, but it's during this protest. And so he, 5 days later, before electrocuting himself, he says, "No to misery, no to unemployment." So he's basically putting words in the mouth of Mohammed Bouazizi and everyone else in the country, and it kind of showcases the problem that everyone's having. That Bouazizi had, but Bouazizi was doing this as a event to kind of show them what's wrong, and then he kind of makes it like a all of Tunisia kind of thing. So that's why he is significant. Oh, and that's very similar to the French Revolution, in that when both of these when they occurred in the French Revolution, the Battle of, let me find the note card. Okay. So there's prolonged tension with both of these revolutions. The rulers, Louis the 16th, I believe, and Ben Ali, they were just really dominating over several years. So the tension was just rising, and when the storm of Bastille and these two events happened, it kind of just made everything blow up because that tension was building for such a long time. And it was like a domino effect for both of these events. Obviously, in the French Revolution, the events just kept getting more and more violent. Same thing with these. So after these sparks, the police and citizens were just having protests daily, and violence was occurring. Police officers were dying, people were dying, Tunisians were dying, etc. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Okay, so we believe that there was no way to stop the revolution. Due to the citizens and the high unemployment rate, they could not provide a adequate life to be successful, and therefore there's no way for them to lead a happy life. So they ended up equating the Ben Ali's wife to Marie Antoinette, and because she had such a luxurious lifestyle of buying the most expensive things, she did not supply a good message to her people, to demonstrate that you don't need money to be happy. So all these people are suffering, and she's living this grand life, and that's just really not fair. So there was no way to provide a successful life, and as such, we felt that there was no way in stopping the revolution. So we're gonna talk about a couple of groups. The first main big one is obviously the government. This is Ben Ali, and Ben Ali is not in support of education. He honestly couldn't care if you went to college or not. And the message that portrays to the youth is that you don't have to be educated to get a job, but look at the unemployment rates, they are sky high. So he was also so self-conscious about himself that his reputation was the highest thing on the list. He had his pictures in stores, in restaurants, literally anywhere you looked, there was him. And because of this, when people tried to speak out against him, he was not in favor of that and shut every single protest down. He went so far as to pay off protesters to not speak about the faults of Tunisia. He gained his president, or his dictatorship basically, from a bloodless coup with the president Bourguiba, and he controlled the media, as we said before. And also, during protests, he actually sacrificed the military, and just was fine with people dying in exchange for his luxurious life. And yeah. The next one we're going to talk about is women. Women in especially Israeli countries, they don't have a lot of rights. So they wanted an increase in the workforce, just they were underpaid, they were not represented well, and they were not treated with respect. And although that is still a common issue in Muslim countries, they demanded this respect, and so they preached for equality. And this kind of goes along with the unemployment rates because they wanted equality in the workforce. And I think women amount to about 20% of the workforce, and about 20% of women have jobs. So what are you going to talk about with the other 80%? Well, the other 80% are at home raising children, and it's a custom in almost Israeli cultures to not teach sex education. And so women were having to take care of these babies and not able to supply for their family. Okay, so the next group that we're going to talk about are college graduates. And Mohammed Bouazizi was actually a college graduate when he set himself on fire. And so he was kind of like the image for these college graduates. And they were really just driving the revolution. There was a lack of like physiological needs within college students because they were having to provide for themselves. And there's no way to do that if you don't have a job. So they created the Union of Unemployment Graduates, and they were the start of the revolution. Their protests were actually illegal because Ben Ali was like, no, we're not doing that. And they had like a slogan kind of going. It's kind of like Shu Haraya Kamara Wadanaya, which means work, freedom, and nation of dignity. Okay, so the next group we're going to talk about is the farmers. The farmers were really taking a hit in the 2008 crisis. All the food in the area was being kind of imported, and they didn't have, like, literally no one in Israeli or African countries had a lot of food. And so because of this, all the jobless people needed to go to the farms and kind of create more food. So in this picture, you can see the women trying to stack up all the produce. And because of this, all of the people who were unemployed, ran to the farms. And they refused to pay for their irrigation and just kind of like their resources because they felt that the farming was kind of such a big, important part of the economy that they really didn't need to pay for it. The next prominent kind of group was the power of the youth. The youth really drove this revolution as well because they had the power of the media, and just as we all use our phones all the time, they were speaking out. And it wasn't more of that they were realizing all of the faults, as more of they were just wanting to speak out and be more engaged. And so the youth of Tunisia actually became the voice of the revolution and started to speak out against all the issues. All right, and then finally we have our effects. So currently Tunisia is not doing so great. They still have around 100,000 people unemployed, and they need about 80,000 more jobs to rack up the economy. There is a recession and there's no growth. And unfortunately they have no way to recuperate or fix themselves because they are being threatened by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And so they are literally just taking hit after hit after hit, and there's no way to rebuild themselves. But a couple positives were they were able to get a democracy, and they have 3 branches of government, much like ours. They have a constitution, and they have radicalized just women's rights, the youth to speak, and the media is more a custom in modern day. And yeah, so
Thank you.
Thank you.